Thinking about leaving the US? You are not alone. More Americans are thinking about leaving than at any other point in history. Between the cost of living, political exhaustion, just failing to pass the vibe check, a lot of people are asking the same questions. What does leaving actually involve? First thing to consider is the visa process. This is where people get tripped up. Most European Union countries are in what's called the Schengen zone, and the Schengen zone shares immigration policy. So if you're a US passport holder, you're allowed to stay in the Schengen zone for 90 days, but then after that you have to leave for at least 90 before you can come back. This is going to include some really popular countries like France, Spain, Italy, Germany. So you really want to consider that. A lot of people do what's called the Schengen shuffle, and this is where you stay in the Schengen zone for 90 days and then you leave for 90 days and then you just come back and you rinse and repeat. And you can basically do that indefinitely. Now here in Albania, a US passport holder gets a year free, no strings attached, no questions asked. It's really unique and it's a really awesome thing to take advantage of. It's definitely a big reason that you see a lot of US expats here in Albania. This tip applies broadly to traveling or immigrating. Make sure you understand the visa process. It's really important. You can get yourself into some real trouble. That doesn't mean talk to ChatGPT about it. You can start there, but don't expect that a foreign government's gonna cut you much slack when you overstay your visa because ChatGPT told you that it should be fine. Next is access to banking. You wanna understand banking fees, ATM fees, what's associated with conversion if you need to change your money into another currency. All these things need to be considered. A lot of these countries, especially the popular expat destinations, have ATMs everywhere, but those ATM fees are really high. Most of these countries don't allow US citizens to open up bank accounts either because the IRS has some pretty tricky obligations that it forces these banks to adhere to, and so a lot of banks don't want to mess with it, and they just won't even let you open an account. I found out recently that my debit card's about to be canceled. They sent me a new card which got shipped to my virtual mailbox, but then from my virtual mailbox, I've been waiting for almost a month for it to get from there to here in Albania through their mail system. Luckily, I was prepared for this, so I started a Charles Schwab account before we left, and there's a lot of advantages with it. For example, it'll cover all of your foreign ATM fees, which at this point has easily saved me over $100 in 2025. Bottom line, assume something's gonna go wrong, have backups for your banking, for your debit cards, have second accounts that you can transfer funds between. Just make sure you have some contingency plans because you're not gonna regret it. This next one doesn't get talked about enough. That's gonna be food. If you don't have to worry about this, consider yourself lucky. It's often overlooked, but think about this. If you don't like peanuts, maybe you can learn to like them. But if you're allergic to peanuts, this can literally be dangerous. Some people want to experience the culture and they want to go out and take advantage of these restaurant prices. I've heard expats say that sometimes they're able to spend less when they eat out than if they were to stay at home and cook. But for other people, it's a whole other level of complication. Some people can't just go where it smells good. You really need to make sure that you consider things like access to these foods. If you have specialty foods that you need, if you're even able to get them, make sure that you can find them, make sure that you know what they're gonna cost because sometimes those foods are gonna be really expensive. Some things you can compromise on and other things you can't. You just have to know that you can get it. Hey, if you're finding this useful, consider subscribing. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I like to cover here, which leads me to healthcare. This is a really big consideration. A lot of people look at the cost of living in a country like Albania and they think it seems really appealing, but they don't consider that it also comes with a lot of things that are gonna be different, like the infrastructure for healthcare or access to prescriptions. Laws are different all over the world. Something as simple as, say, ADHD medication or hormone therapy or antidepressants you might find really difficult to get, sometimes completely impossible. Here in Albania, for things like that, there are definitely some workarounds you'll hear other expats talk about. I've heard of people taking inexpensive flights and ferries to neighboring countries like Italy, and they might stock up, get a 6 month to year supply of a prescription that might be difficult to get here. You just need to be sure that you're considering that and don't expect that it'll be easy to get any medication or treatment that's easy to come by in the US. You can't just drive up to Walgreens and get a prescription filled. Now this last one really matters for when you first land. Cell phone service. My wife and I really messed this one up on our test trip. When we got here, we found out that our phones were locked to our provider. We thought we checked, but couldn't make them work. Couldn't get a local SIM to work at all. Wasn't even an option. What we ended up doing was going to a cell phone store and purchasing the cheapest Android that they had. It was about $100. And we got the cheapest Traveler cell plan that they had, which came with data. We were able to use that phone as a hotspot and connect both of our phones to it in order to both have access to our phones and use our own phone numbers while we were here for our test trip. Definitely wasn't the cheapest solution, but it worked at the time. I still have the phone actually. Before moving for good, we learned that we needed to have our phone numbers provided by an international carrier in order for them to work here. So I transferred both of our numbers to Tello. I assumed that would be fine, but a couple of hours after landing, our phone stopped working. Turns out if you don't have a phone plan through one of the local providers, which is One or Vodafone, that international carrier doesn't have access. Once I was able to set up a local account with a data plan, my US number started to work again. No one told me that. I didn't know to prepare for that, and I just had to learn that lesson the hard way. So make sure that your plan works internationally. Make sure you can easily access the plan so you can make changes to it on the fly. You want to add data, or if you want to add minutes or some kind of a feature that you don't have turned on, you want to be able to do that while you're traveling. That's one of the advantages to Tello. Some people use other services. There's other options like Google Voice. Personally, I think using a Google service for something like cell phone service is a little risky because you never know when Google's going to decide to turn that off. With two-factor authentication being such a common thing, I'd hate to lose access to a phone number that I depend on for accessing things like banking. And the last tip regarding cell phone service, don't buy your SIM card at the airport. You're gonna have a huge markup and it's completely unnecessary. Now, if you need to pay that markup because you need the cost of convenience and you just can't wait for the service, go ahead and do it. But just know that if you can wait a little while, even 10 or 15 minutes outside the airport, you're probably gonna find some sort of a cell phone shop or provider that's gonna sell you a much cheaper SIM card. Leaving the US can be incredibly freeing, but it's not that simple. A little bit of planning up front can save you a lot of stress later. If this helped, like and subscribe. And if you want more unfiltered expat content, check out this next video.